Oh,
Hi friends, welcome to this week's class of Dead Funny University. I am your host and fellow student Kelsey, and this week we are continuing our discussion on The Matrix. We're going to discuss Reloaded and
Revolution.
Revolution. Oh, right.
They had a theme that they went for. It was things.
Ah, all right. Wonderful. Cody, if you can't tell, is our visiting professor this week. Cody, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here, and thank you for talking to me about movies that I'm not sure you like that much.
Yeah, this one is complicated for me. So this week we're talking about the Rematrices. Or as I put it, let's just recount a perfect movie to make clumsy philosophical points about choice or whatever. Also, it needs to be sexy. Also, there's more leather. Also, this was a bad time for CG.
That's incredible.
Yep. So, Kelsey, are you ready for your quiz?
I am.
Perfect. All right. What is the main threat in the Matrix whatever? Oh, sorry, I can read you the answers. Yeah, you can read them. Go for it.
My choices are a big drill, freezing the geothermal power core. I think that's a reference to The Core, and I love that movie. A virus that kills the human in the Matrix. Ooh, or Agent Smith. Well, I think we killed Agent Smith in the first one. So I'm going to go with a virus?
All right. And I'm not supposed to tell you if you got these right or wrong, right?
Correct.
Okay. What is the main philosophical topic in the Rematri?
Nature of choice, the false messiah, sexual freedom, or hyper-reality? Oh God, I'm gonna guess it's the nature of choice.
Who directed the Rematrices?
Steven Spielberg, John Cena, the Wachowski, or George Lucas? I hope we're going to continue with the Wachowskis.
The Wachowskis. That is correct. Also, that should have an S in it. My bad. Slide typo. Also, hang on. My water softener just turned on, and it's going to be terrible on the audio. Moral of the story is we have problems today. My power went out one time, and then my softener kicked on.
Yeah, this episode makes it to air. It's truly just a miraculous effort on Cody's part.
Right? It was a miracle. All right. Who is the architect?
All right. My choices are the leader of Zion, the leader of Robot City, the original creator of the Matrix, or another name for the One. I'm going to hope that's the original creator of the Matrix.
All right.
We're going to go with that answer.
And what powers Zion?
Okay. My choices: captured robot, organic batteries, solar cells, geothermal machines. Zion is the city where everybody's made it out, so it sure as shit better not be organic batteries. I'm gonna go with solar cells since that makes the most sense.
All right, so we're gonna talk. We're just gonna open this up with a discussion about Zion, right? So Zion was mentioned in the first Matrix movie as like the city where all the humans are that have been freed from the Matrix. So the first thing that you need to know about Zion is it is a sexy post-apocalyptic rave city. So, like, the scene that you're seeing on the left here, that's them having a crazy dance party. And, like, my awkward story about this is I, like, remember watching this as a kid with my parents. I think I was probably, like, 10, you know? And it's like, I think my parents just thought it was going to be, like, the first Matrix, where there's just, like, a lot of violence. And then, like, smash cut to rave orgy, where it's just, like, just everybody sweat grinding on each other, and they're all wearing, like, burlap sacks that are, like, glued to their skin with their nipples shoving out of them, you know? There's just, like, people actively, like, making out and groping each other, and I'm like, I don't think my parents expected this part. So yeah, the movies suddenly became very sexy in the sequels, which they were not in the first ones, but anyways, things happen. It's ruled by a council, so there's like elders that sit above sexy rave city and make decisions. It is powered by geothermal energy. This is a plot topic because Neo and the head of the city have like a discussion about like, we also need machines to live, you know. And they're like, what's the difference between this and the Matrix if both have machines? You know.
That is drastic oversimplification.
Yeah, it was, and it just ended up being they talk anyways. And it's just like in caves, like everyone has these tiny little apartments in like caves. It's very steampunky almost. There's like big pipe work going everywhere, and anyways. So that's Zion. So now let's talk about the Matrix. Because it also changes. The first thing that changed about the Matrix is it also got sexy, just different sexy.
Oh God, no.
Like, in the real world, when they have a sexy rave, everyone's like dancing on earth floors playing drums. In the Matrix, when they have a sexy rave, it looks like this. Everyone's in like BDSM clothes. It's just like rave techno music instead of like drums. So there's everyone kind of dresses like everyone in this scene now in the Matrix. They're all just wearing like skin tight leather like face masks. There's a lot of latex going on.
Intense green lighting.
Intense green lighting. Yeah, like there's gonna be a scene later where there's like, well, actually no, it was yeah. So that is the lighting palette for Zion. That's the lighting palette for the Matrix.
Not heavy-handed at all. Very.
Yeah, if you remember in the first review, I said that in Matrix 1, it's like slightly green tinted, and then by the time we get to 2 and 3, they're just like, no, up the green, up the green, up the green,
Oh no.
Also, the other kind of just change they made is just everything that's weird is a computer program. So, like, ghosts, vampires, werewolves, those are just computer programs that have, like, gone rogue. And when a computer program goes rogue, it can either go into the Matrix and hide, or it gets killed by the head of Robot City. So, in your...
a quick question.
Yeah.
When you're done, I've got a question for you.
No, shoot. It's cool.
All right, so, Cody, you have spent some time programming computers.
Yeah.
And you've dealt with certain programs deciding to go rogue. Do you think this is an accurate at all representation of when programs decide to just go off on their own?
I'm like a grumpy curmudgeon about the nature of robotics and our future, because I think it's a relevant topic to talk about. I just don't believe that artificial life can exist. So it's like, no, obviously not. Like, when a program goes rogue, it doesn't open a sexy rave club. It just generally it means the computer broke, or like a part of the code got called that had never been called before is usually what happens. To me is like, we've never used this function of the code before. We tried and it broke. Crazy. So vampires and werewolves don't really come up in the story. They're just mentioned offhand, but there are ghosts that they fight in this story now, which are like computer programs that work for another computer program and a computer program mob, yeah. And they can like phase in and out of buildings and stuff. Anyways, it's just the goofiest thing. Also,
that seems unnecessary when you have agents that can do something very similar.
It really does seem unnecessary, doesn't it? Because it is. Also, the cheating. So, like, in the first Matrix, the people that were hacking in could, like, cheat the rules a little bit. That's been just, like, cranked up to 9,000. Like, everyone is doing insane stuff all of the time. Nothing is grounded anymore. This is because computer generation got good enough that they could do anything and make it look really bad. But it was now possible to fully 3D render a scene, so you better believe they did that frequently. Also,
Played with a new toy.
Neo just gets a nerf. Like, there's a scene where a bunch of guys pull out guns and shoot at him, and he stops the bullets, and then they go, oh, we can't shoot him, so we're just going to attack him with swords. And that works. They manage to, like, hurt Neo by swinging swords at him rather than shooting at him. And I'm like, what?
There is no logic there.
No, there really isn't. It's just like, now Neo can fly really fast, and he's really good at kung fu, and he can stop bullets, and those are his only powers. No other ones. He's not, like, deleting parts of code anymore. He doesn't have, like, really at this point supernatural control over the Matrix. He's been downgraded a little bit so they can still have crazy kung fu fights, because otherwise you would have no reason to have a crazy kung fu fight.
Okay.
So, let's talk about this story. Story starts, Neo has a dream where he sees Trinity die, and he starts having these, like, recurring nightmares that he feels are, like, predicting the future about Trinity's death. Okay, put a pin in it, we're moving on. Movie really kicks off with a bunch of ship captains getting together in the Matrix to talk about the impending doom of Zion, which is a giant drill. So the humans are way far underground.
The humans are way far underground, and the robots made a big drill, and they're drilling down to Zion so they can crack in there and cram a bunch of robots into Zion and then kill everybody with robots, right? That's the main threat in the movie. It's like a ticking clock of the drill is 30 hours away, the drill's 20 hours away, and when like it breaks in, there's no way we're going to be able to stop them, right?
So agents attack this meeting, Neo does kung fu fighting, we move on. When the crews all get back to Zion, there's kind of this tension between the military, who's like, okay, the hacking ships are valuable because they have EMP bombs on them, so we need all of them to be here with us, and so no more going into the Matrix. But Morpheus is like, but the one has to save the world. So Morpheus convinces the council to allow him to go on a secret mission to help Neo fulfill his destiny and become the one, right? So they go back in and they talk to the Oracle. The Oracle gives them, like, beat for beat, just like, here's your mission, exactly planned out for you, which is Neo has to go to the source of the Matrix to end the Matrix. To do that, they need to get through a door. To do that, they need a guy called the Keymaker, who's a rogue program. He makes keys that lets you open magical portals within the Matrix. It's like hacking backdoors. You know how people talk about, like, I'm going to backdoor into a system?
Yeah.
So literally in the Matrix, there are, like, doors you can go through to backdoor into other parts of the Matrix, you know?
Yeah.
Roll your eyes, it's worthy of it. So this Keymaker is a program that helps with that. He's being held captive by the Merovingian, who is a French sex party club owner. That's all you get to know about the Merovingian. They really never explain who he is. He's another rogue program who just went rogue and got sexy.
Why give him a name? It doesn't matter. But what?
Don't worry. I think I need to Google what Merovingian is. Now thinking about it, I should have done that because maybe that's relevant and whatever. We'll get to it. So after Neo talks to the Oracle, he is attacked by Agent Smith, the one that he killed at the end of the last movie. Agent Smith is now just back to being alive. And I guess what happened is, this is vague, when Neo killed Agent Smith, it like didn't kill him, it separated him from the Matrix. So now Agent Smith is a rogue program, and when Neo deleted him, he like put some of himself into Smith. So now Smith is like more superpowered, and Smith can clone himself now. So it used to be he could like jump from one person to another. Now he can just make copies of himself, and he just goes about making copies everywhere. There's a big stupid fight where Neo fights 7,000 Mr. Smiths at once, and then that ends, and they go on this quest to find the Keymaker from the Merovingian, right? Go to talk to them. Right. They go to talk to the Merovingian. Sorry, I know this is confusing. It's messy. Okay, so the Merovingian. They go to talk to the Merovingian. He's sitting in a sexy restaurant. He feeds someone a cake that makes them have an orgasm. Whatever. Yep. They're like, hey, we want the Keymaker. He's all like, no, because you guys don't know why you're making the choices you're making. You're just doing whatever the Oracle tells you to do. She's also just a rogue program, so I'm not going to help you. Great. Then the Merovingian's wife just like corners them in the bathroom and is like, hey, if Neo makes out with me, I'll tell you guys how to get to the Keymaker or whatever. Neo makes out with her, they go find the Keymaker, right? So they find the keymaker. He's a tiny old man with keys all over him. And right at that moment, the Merovingian finds out that his wife has betrayed him. He shows up, and there is a bonkers fight for about 30 minutes of the movie. This is where, like, there's ghosts phasing in and out of places. There's car chases. They're on a highway. They cut cars in half with samurai swords. It just goes fully bonkers, and it lasts forever. There is a lot of computer-generated stuff. There are some actually pretty cool practical effects, but oh boy, does it just keep going. Eventually, they win, and they get the keymaker, and everyone's fine. But there's a crazy fight in between. Okay, so then this is where we get the next chunk of the plot, like the heist that's going to have to happen here. So, the keymaker has a key that can open a door to the source, but that door is in the middle of a like military compound skyscraper that is rigged to explode. So, they have to do 3 things. First, Morpheus, the keymaker, and Neo have to go in and get to the source. Second, they have to shut off power to the city in the Matrix. So they have to, like, blow up a power generator. Yep. Third, they have to destroy a generator at the building to stop it from turning on and then powering the bombs and exploding them. It's like a redundancy thing. So they have a redundant system. They have to knock out both of them. 3 crews went with Morpheus to go and, allow Neo to fulfill his destiny. So they're like, great, we have all the people we need. Neo's like, okay, that's great. Just don't have Trinity go into the Matrix because I've had a bunch of visions about her dying. Great. So Smith, he implanted himself onto a real human being who was on one of these crews, who then sabotaged it from happening. So one of the crews is taken out, so the generator doesn't get taken offline, so Trinity has to jump into the Matrix to destroy the generator so the building doesn't blow up. And she's like, while all this is going on is when she is almost killed, right? So Trinity is in mortal peril at this point. Neo and Morpheus or whatever, they make it to the source. The thing you're seeing in the bottom right-hand corner, that is the source of the Matrix and the architect. So Neo gets there, he talks to the architect, and this is where, again, there's just like, hey, here's a big plot bomb for you. The One is like a cyclical thing that is done every few hundred years. When the Matrix starts getting weird, they just spawn the One. He has supernatural powers within the Matrix, and eventually what happens is he goes back to the source, he like hard reboots the Matrix back to default settings, and then the robots kill everyone in Zion except for like 50 people that they allow to escape to rebuild a new Zion, right? And that's happened like 6 times already, and Neo is just the 7th one of those people, right?
Okay.
So that's all given to you when he talks to the architect. The architect is like, look, you don't have any choice in this. Like, you've been following a script from the moment you woke up. We've known you were going to do everything you were going to do. Destroying Zion is part of the plan. So you have to go and pick like 50 people to repopulate Zion. That's your job as the One. And at this moment, though, Neo realizes that Trinity is in mortal peril. So he's given a choice. He can either leave, try to save Trinity, and Zion will almost certainly be destroyed by the robots, and, like, the Matrix will end, all humanity will die. Or he can do the hard reboot of the Matrix, let most of humanity die, let Trinity die, and, fulfill the prophecy of the One, right? So he doesn't do the sucky one. He tries to save Trinity. He does, and oh no, now they have to try to stop the robots without, like, the prophecy did not help them stop the robots, basically. So it's like, shoot, everything's terrible. That's where the Matrix Reloaded ends, with them trying to escape off of the ship that they were using to hack in. They get attacked by robots, and well, outside of the Matrix, Neo is able to, like, kill the robots by waving his hand at them, and then he passes out. So he starts doing some next level Jesus stuff right at the end there.
I feel like I started on one roller coaster, and then as I was going off of like bumps and things like that, I got thrown onto multiple other roller coasters that made no sense.
Don't worry, it gets worse in The Matrix Revolution.
Hellscape. Okay.
So, Neo fails his goal on The Matrix Reloaded. He doesn't stop all the robots, so the drill's still coming, and it won't stop coming. He wakes up in a train station. So he's unconscious and not hooked up to the Matrix, but he just is in the Matrix now because he's, like, becoming in tune with the robots, I guess. So he wakes up in a train station. That train station just happens to be owned by the Maravangian. Who would have thought? You know, the sexy French guy. He owns that train. He just has Neo captured now somehow. Anyways, so Trinity and Morpheus go to rescue him. They like make some trade with the Maravangian. Whatever. They get Neo back. Everything's fine. So, this is the point where we start getting a hint that there's a secret Agent Smith in the real world. So, like I said, one of the crews was, like, sabotaged by Agent Smith. They find one crew member alive from that crew, and he, like, wakes up and he starts talking with Agent Smith's cadence, and he says he doesn't have any memory of what happened. It's like, okay, so he's secretly the bad guy, whatever. Neo goes back to the Oracle to have, like, one more chat about, like, what am I supposed to do now? Like, things seem pretty bad. Smith is at this point clearly taking over more and more of the Matrix because he just keeps cloning himself. They're, like, have no chance of winning against the robots, so it's like things are pretty dire. And the Oracle just kind of, like, vaguely tells him to, like, go and try to talk to robots at Robot City. So the ships split up. They have two ships left. One ship heads back to Zion to try to help with the battle for Zion. And Neo and Trinity go off to talk to the robots because they hope that they can barter some kind of peace treaty with the robots. All right. So this is like the end of the first act, right? The second act is just like the fully bonkers battle for Zion, where like the drill cracks into Zion. Zion is defended by giant mech-suited guys with big machine guns. There is a big, stupid CGI battle that lasts for a very long time. I mean, it is easily 40 minutes of the movie is just people in mech suits screaming and shooting while getting killed by robots. It is a lot.
Oh, man.
Meanwhile, Neo is trying to reach the Robot City. While he's on his way to the Robot City, that's where, like, secret Agent Smith, who's the one who's actually, like, in a human body now, like, gets the drop on Neo. They have a fight. He blinds Neo in the fight, so he, like, burns out real-life Neo's eyes, but eventually gets killed. And after he gets blinded, though, Neo can now see anything robotic, though, he can just see. So, like, if he's looking at the sky, he sees nothing. But if he's looking at a robot, he can see, like, robots. Like, they're in the Matrix all the time now. Anyways, back to the Battle for Zion. So, the Battle for Zion is, like, at its most dire moment when Morpheus shows back up with one of his remaining ships, detonates an EMP inside the city, which, like, kills all the robots that are attacking them at that moment, but also knocks out, like, all of the defenses for Zion.
Not great.
So it's like he like wins the battle, but that loses the war. Like, now they're like down to like fighting robots with like little energy guns. And so they're just basically like now hunkered in a corner like, well, this is it, you know? So Neo gets to Robot City. In getting there, he crash lands. When he crash lands, that kills Trinity. It's kind of a weird anticlimactic death where it's just like, we're in this together! Smash into a city! Trinity's dead. Okay. So, moving on. Neo reaches the, like, heart of the Robot City. That's, like, the scene in the bottom right-hand corner where he's talking to, like, a big, scary robot face. And basically makes the deal. He'll go into the Matrix and kill Smith, because Smith is, like, at this point fully taken over the Matrix. if the robots have a ceasefire with humanity. So there is yet another incredibly long CGI fight between Neo and Agent Smith. Neo loses kind of on purpose, gets cloned to be another Agent Smith, and then I think what happens is the robots kill Neo's body in the real world, or like overload Neo's body in the real world, and that kills Agent Smith in the Matrix. So like Neo gets turned into another Agent Smith, and then the robots do something to Neo's real life body to like delete Agent Smith out of the Matrix. And then they honor the ceasefire because Smith has been destroyed and the Matrix has been returned to normal. So the movie kind of ends on the Matrix is rebooted back to normal. Humans are all still connected to it, but the robots are no longer trying to kill the freed humans. And the like last scene of the movie is all of like the rogue programs that have been living in the Matrix have like a nice moment on a park bench together where they're like, we did it. We now have a home in the Matrix. And that's the end.
What the fuck?
So if you want to ask any questions about the story...
I have so many questions about the story. Is now the time for that?
I mean, I have like a few other like things I want to talk about, but if we want to parse through the story right now, you just sat through a lot of stuff and I respect that.
Holy nuts. So at the end of 3 movies, so we've sunk roughly 6 hours of our lives into this.
Yeah, probably more like almost 8. But yeah.
Oh, hellscape. Okay, so between 6 and 8 hours of our lives we've sunk into this. At the end of that, the Matrix still exists.
Yeah.
And humans are still trapped.
Some are, yeah.
There are still freed humans that don't want other humans in the Matrix.
Well,
and all that really happened over the course of 3 movies is that rogue programs are no longer being targeted?
Well, now you just got to an important point of the story. Kind of, that's absolutely is the only end result difference. The big difference for the humans is the robots were trying to kill all the humans in Zion. They wanted all of humanity to be in the Matrix. Now they're leaving Zion alone to do whatever it wants. But Zion, I think it is implied, is no longer going to be waking up humans in the Matrix.
Oh, so now we have 2 kingdoms.
Ceasefire. Yeah, like they're not gonna battle each other anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you brought up something that, like, this is a little out of order for, like, the confused philosophy slide here, but, like, what constitutes life is a thing in this story. So if we kick back to this slide here, this is Neo standing in the train station. The 3 other people in this scene are all computer programs that are seeking asylum within the Matrix, right? They all talk about how they're a family, they love each other, they don't want to be killed, they have autonomy and want to have a life, and the Matrix is the place where they can do that. So the machines, like, they've always been somewhat sentient, right? Because they, like, exercise their will to enslave humanity, but now they're like expressing emotions like love and compassion and empathy, and are able to, and like that's what the Oracle is, right? She's a computer program too who likes humans and wants people to have a good life. So these later 2 movies do kind of ask the question of like, what constitutes being alive, what constitutes life and living it, and should we not worry about the fate of all these computer programs that are living within the Matrix? That, I think, could be an interesting question, but it is not well handled in the movie, in my opinion. They spend way too much time kicking.
Yeah, it sounds like a valuable conversation. Also, like a computer program telling me I have autonomy, I have a family, and we love each other. Like, that brings up a whole new conversation around AI, like, having emotion and the experience of emotion. We experience emotion through chemical reactions, and does that need to be the definition of emotion? Or how would a computer experience love? How would it express that? is that autonomy like real autonomy, and should that be valued above like sentient, like otherwise sentient autonomy, maybe life autonomy? I don't know how to say it. Like there's a lot there that you could unpack to be very interesting and
Yeah.
meaningful and thought-provoking, but it doesn't sound like you can do a lot of that in the context of this overly sexy action movie.
Well, and that's kind of the problem, is that those philosophical moments, they're just like two characters sitting in a white room talking. It's the same thing that happened when Neo meets the architect at the end of Matrix Reloaded, and the architect is telling him, like, you can't even make choice, all you can do is, like, be a slave to chemical reactions, you have no choice in this matter, I already know what you're gonna do, I can already tell. Also, like, that's that middle thing right there that I have written, choice and is it possible, something that the Oracle says in the movie that is a pretty good line is, like, you didn't come here to make the choice, you've already made it, you've come here to understand why you made that choice, you know? That's her talking to Neo, like, he's going and talking to an Oracle about what he should do, and she's like, you already know what you're gonna do, you just don't know why you've made that choice, you know? And so, like, those questions are there, and the scenes where they talk about them aren't even necessarily poorly written. They are just so, like, parted out separate from the rest of the movie. You know what I mean? There's the punching part, and there's the philosophy part. So you'll have, like, the philosophy part, and then people kick punch for a while, and then you have a philosophy part, and then people kick punch. And they do not mesh, and they do not fit well together, in my opinion. Which ends up making some of the philosophical questions that are posed feel clumsy and not fleshed out, because they spend 40 minutes on an action scene instead of 40 minutes on philosophy. Which, yeah. So the other answer to your question is that the Oracle kind of implies that she's, like, somewhat behind this idea of having one of the, like, recursive, the one prophesied people break that cycle so that she can rescue all these lost programs that are seeking asylum within the Matrix. So, like, the Oracle kind of had her own goal, which was to stop the war between humans and robots, yes, but also to rescue all these programs that were living within the Matrix as their, like, sanctuary. So then there's that other kind of level of there's, like, 3 different parties all vying for their own desires. There's, like, the robots, rogue programs, and humans all kind of, like, pushing and pulling at each other.
Which, when you end up with multiple multiple parties with their own agendas actively fighting over the same, I'm going to say resources for lack of a better term.
Yeah, the Matrix, yeah.
Yeah, the Matrix and human beings that are powering this, like, that is more realistic and more valuable, but it sounds like they didn't intentionally flesh out those 3 parties and give each of them relatable qualities so you can kind of sympathize and feel the tension.
Yeah, the problem is it just was all so fast developed in the last 2 movies, because it was nowhere in the first movie. Mm-hmm. The Oracle was not a computer program in the first movie. She was not defined. There weren't, those, like, rogue programs didn't exist. So now in the second 2 movies, there was, like, a plot of the first movie that was, like, completed, wrapped up, and done. And then in the second 2 movies, they just had to try to retcon a new, bigger conflict to have. And so really, when you, like, watch these movies or don't, I think it's just, like, good to cut them in half. Like, there's the Matrix, and then there's the Rematrices. These are a different thing. They're their own thing, you know? And they ask some interesting questions. It's just clumsy about it.
So, we have a romantic relationship to some degree between Neo and Trinity.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, explicitly at this point, they're a couple.
Okay. Is that, like, well fleshed out and relatable, or, like...
Kind of.
That romance.
So, I mean, in the first movie, no, but if you go into the second movie assuming that they're in love and, like, a good relationship, they actually do play off of each other pretty well. Like, they have decent chemistry. Like, there are times when Neo is kind of acting as the messiah for humans. You know, people gather around him and want his support and his help. He's like, he has freed a few people from the Matrix that are now loyal to him and obsessed with him, you know. And Trinity, like, understands that and supports it, and they, like, have a good relationship, I guess. Also, there is kind of a turn for Neo about how he understands Trinity's, like, agency, because, like, whenever there are people in love in a dire situation, there's always the thing like, you have to stay on base, I'm gonna go do the scary mission, right? And Neo does that, and then when Trinity goes on the scary mission, she does almost die, and Neo has to rescue her. But in the second movie, he kind of has, like, a change of heart, so when they go to Robot City together, she's like, well, I'm coming with you, and he doesn't really fight her on it. It's like, they both kind of understand they're going on a suicide mission at this point, and he's okay with her, like, having enough agency to decide that she wants to go with him, you know? And he's not like, no, you have to stay home and raise our kids that we now have. You know, they, like, don't do that, which is, like, thumbs up, good job.
Good, yeah.
But, I don't know, she still feels like an underwritten character to me. There just isn't a lot with her in a way that I feel like there should be, but, whatever, you know. It's like, at some point...
Also, like, late 90s, early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
We're still not... like, across culture, we're still not doing a great job of writing strong female characters and kind of figuring that process out.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing, too, is, like, it's not really a story about Neo and Trinity. That's not the main thrust. They talk about something that makes Neo different is that he is in love with one person, not that he generally has, like, a benevolent attitude towards humanity. So, like, previous iterations of the One loved humanity but weren't in love with someone enough to, like, break the cycle and do something irrational. Neo being in love with Trinity made him, like, emotional enough to do something different. So there's, like, that little bit of it, but then that is almost kind of making her into, like, a tool to complete an end, which kind of the Oracle set them up. So maybe that is the case, that the Oracle, like, pushed Neo to have this relationship so he would be able to, like, break this cycle of the Ones and destroying Zion. So, the movie is very much about what it means to make a choice.
Got it.
All right, so do you have any other questions just about the story in general?
No, my questions are no longer about the story, so I'll let you continue with the other things that you have to say.
Okay, so this slide is called Brevity is the Soul of Punching. So there's some big issues to me with this movie. The biggest one is all of the fight scenes. So the first thing they do is they just rewrite rules so they can continue to have fights. We already talked about that. Neo can stop bullets, but he can't stop a sword. Now they can have sword fights. Ugh. The other thing that kills me is the really bad CG, and the bottom right two images are just some examples of some real heinous CGI in this movie. Like, I don't know if it's coming across at, like, looking at it through your, like, monitor, but, oh boy, very smooth faces, low detail. Like, that's supposed to be Neo on the right, just helicoptering with a stick. It looks extremely dated. And the fight scenes in the second two movies are so long and so boring. The last fight between Neo and Agent Smith, it goes on for like 20 minutes, and it's just them punching each other back and forth forever.
Was this before, like, directors and producers figured out, like, there's fight fatigue? Like, people get bored watching fights after a while.
I think it was at, like, the front end of CG battles that you could just have go on forever. Like, this was, I think, contemporary or before Lord of the Rings. So, like, the battle at Helm's Deep is, like, an hour of the movie. They're just battling at Helm's Deep. You know, it goes on forever. And I think that this was at a time that was really exciting, that they could do as much as they could with computer graphics. So they really leaned heavily into, like, we can have this bonkers crazy fight, but then it loses some of the, like, emotional momentum. Because the other thing is, there are moments in all of these fights that are really good. Like the last little bit of the fight between Smith and Neo is actually a really good emotional moment, where Smith cannot understand why Neo is fighting, and he's just like, I'm choosing to fight. That's the point. It's like, I'm making the choice to be here and fighting you, even though I know I'm going to lose, you know? And it's like, there are good emotional beats, but they're just lost in this sea of, like, garbage. And then the other one, there's a picture for, like, the Battle of Zion. This is, like, a screenshot of it. And it actually is, like, from a composition standpoint, this looks really cool. Like, the blue and the orange on opposite sides, like the robot being surrounded by, like, the big mech thing that's fighting the robots being surrounded by a swarm of stuff. It, like, looks really cool. It's like a stunning visual for 2 seconds. And then the rest of the fight is just them punching for hours at these robots, you know?
Also, this visual looks like maybe a painting.
Yeah.
Or, like, the idea that this is what I would see on my TV screen is insane.
Yeah, and it's like, but this moment, like, the lighting, the smoke, all that, like, really cool elements, and, like, the color choice and the palette, all of that, it's 5 seconds of that fight that goes on for 40 minutes, and it's the only good 5 seconds, you know? And it's like, they needed to edit down these big... But at the time, it was so novel that now looking back on it, it's hard to kind of stomach some of that.
Yeah.
And then just generically, there is some cool world building with Zion, but, you know, it's just, it gets lost. All right, so now then, questions, if you have more.
Okay, what is the number one, in your opinion, number one redeeming factor of these two movies?
I would say if you... So there's been a kind of late days resurgence of love for these two movies on the internet. There are a lot of decent YouTube essays about what these movies mean and what philosophical questions they ask and answer. And I think some of the talking points they bring up are actually interesting. It makes a better YouTube essay than it does a movie. So there is good stuff to cut out when you edit it down to a 10-minute clip show that you play on a YouTube video.
So this is great to watch maybe for a high school class to have further conversations about, not necessarily to engage with in a meaningful way if you're just wanting an action movie. Or if you're really looking for deep philosophy, watch the first... No, not even watch the first one. Pick up the questions and move on.
Yeah, I mean,
Find somebody else who did it better.
There are, like, I think, profound movies that exist. Like, I mean, the Wachowskis directed Cloud Atlas, which is one of my favorite movies, and I don't think is necessarily well loved, but, like, that movie asked a lot of really interesting philosophical questions, made a lot of really poignant and beautiful points, and it had action in it, but those action scenes lasted like 5 minutes and they got out of the way, and the rest of the movie was just characters talking to each other. And it was way better that way. So I think they eventually figured out, like, oh, we kind of, like, lost the point on these two movies, and then later on they kind of found it again, so, you know.
What do you think is, like, why do you think they lost so much of what they had in the first movie?
I mean, at the time, being able to do fight scenes on the scope that they could do them was such a huge trend and such an amazing feat that, I mean, it's like the Star Wars prequels, same time, you know? Everything was shot on green screen, everything was CG, we can do anything, so we're just going to throw a million things on the screen and it's going to be amazing. And then you watch it and it's just like, there's no emotion, you know? So
we're no longer bound by the normal rules, and so we're not going to play by the rules at all, and we're going to show the people something they've never seen before, not realizing some rules are good.
Yeah, it just ends up being a soupy mess, and it's impossible to follow,
It feels like there were about minimum 2, but up to 4 different ideas for how this movie could go, and how, like, what the major moments were going to be and where the tension was going to be. And then everybody at different times decided this is going to be that moment and kind of created a soupy mess.
Yeah.
Does that feel accurate? Okay.
It's definitely... I remember I was reading a book that I do like, but the end of the book, I just told people it was climaxing too hard, which, yeah. But it's accurate for how it feels, you know, when you're like watching this movie that's like the climax hits and it's just like we're just gonna keep doing it. Just keep everyone's getting an emotional moment. Every character gets something, you know? And that's how it felt when watching these movies, and a lot of movies do that, right? Like, you could say the same thing about Lord of the Rings, you could say the same thing about Star Wars, where it's just like you hit the end of the movie and it's just like everything happens at once! And it's like, you kind of lose that, like, focused emotional moment for just like, we're gonna do everything right now. And I think the problem with that is then it downplays the importance of any one of those moments individually. Like, that moment of that one remaining mech suit on the bridge battling to defend Zion is a really amazing moment that gets overshadowed because 2 seconds later you're cutting to someone else like kicking 3,000 copies of Hugo Weaving, and it just kind of like loses some of that, like, you know, it's just doing too many things. So yeah, it gets confused.
Are they worth watching?
Oh wait, it's true. That was on my that was something I put on my final slide. So we'll skip it when we get to my final slide.
Okay.
I would say, for me, the way that I always look at these things is like, if I'm interested enough to want to watch a review for a movie, I'll usually want to watch the movie first, even if I know it's bad. So like, I watched what was the one that was terrible?
Cats?
Well, I haven't watched Cats yet, but I also haven't watched a lot of reviews for Cats yet. Suicide Squad was like kind of widely agreed as being a like confused pile of garbage, right? I watched that movie before I watched all the reviews because I don't want someone else to tell me my opinion on them, you know?
Yeah.
So like when I said I would do this with you, I went back and rewatched both of those movies, and then I went on YouTube and watched a bunch of people talk about them because I wanted to kind of have my own thoughts on it first, and then that way when I was watching other people talk about it, I could engage with the ideas not passively. So I think it's worth watching just so you can have your own opinion on it. And I mean, it's 5 hours. They're both like 2.5 hour movies. But, I mean, you know, they're not boring.
And we're currently under quarantine, so, I mean, what else am I going to do?
Right? I mean, like, you get to watch some sexy rave dancing.
What was the function of sex being added into these last two movies?
That's a complicated question. The nicest way that I could put it is sex in Zion was used to highlight the passion of humanity. So, and also a more primal, real maybe kind of humanity. So sex in Zion is orgiastic, but grounded. People seem very real and very, like, I don't want to say in control of their own, like, decision-making. That's not exactly what I mean, but, like, grounded, well expressing a joy of life that in this case just happens to take the form of sexy grind dancing. Whereas inside the Matrix, like, the sexy rave party, everyone was in, like, bondage gear and masked and very artificial feeling. Everything was very plastic and leather and, like, rubbery and dark. So it's like that difference of sex being something that's, like, despicable, hidden, and, like, voyeuristic versus sex being a celebration of life. I think that was maybe what they were going for. That is the nicest thing I could say. The meanest way that I could put it is they needed to sell these movies, and there were a lot of attractive people in the first Matrix, and they kept their clothes on the whole time. So having a bunch of hot 20-somethings, like, rubbing up on each other is, like, eye candy for your movie-going audience, you know?
It feels like there's a whole college essay that could be written about the use of sexuality in these movies. Because you're talking about bondage and you're talking about, like, actual slaves in goo pods and
Yeah, right.
pleasure versus sex. Like there's a difference between pleasure and sex, and
Well,
that's kind of lived out in these examples that you're giving me.
and the computer program, the Meravangian, that is presiding over his like weird BDSM orgy,
Yeah.
is sinister with the way that he uses sex. So the first time that he's introduced, he feeds someone a piece of cake that gives them an orgasm.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
That was like not a consensual act. He did not tell that person this is an orgasm cake. He fed them an orgasm cake as like almost like it feels like a like Greek mythology level like prank that a god would pull to just show that they have power. Like they're just messing with someone because they can. So they're going to do
power
this.
Play, it's meant to knock them back. It's meant to like humble them before you kind of thing.
Almost more like a Puck, you know, like it was a prank to him, not like something meaningful. Whereas in Zion, sex was presented as something very communal, and like it wasn't frowned upon. So like the character Morpheus, who's like a stern prophet, they're like people talk about how, you know, when he was in his wild 20s, he was down there grind dancing with the rest of them, you know, and now he's a prophet, and there wasn't like oh, shame on you for your sex days. It was just like he was like, yeah, go have our awesome sex party in the basement, you know. We're alive, woo! Whereas in the Matrix, it's like it feels more of like the exchange of power and like using sex as a tool. I mean, even like the way that they get the keymaker, right, is Neo has to make out with the Meravangian's wife in front of his girlfriend. That's just a dickish power play. Like it is. That is how they like treat and use sex within the Matrix. So I think there's meat there, but again, this is all punctuated by 50 minutes of punching. So that could be interesting. But instead, you're left wondering, did they do that on purpose? Or is it that just from pure aesthetics, it made sense to have two visually similar scenes be different in their aesthetic dressing? You could say that the like rave dance in Zion was exactly the same as the rave dance in the Matrix, other than the costumes were different, which is also kind of true. But, you know, if I'm trying to find deeper meaning, I could find it.
Yeah, it's the question that I've heard you ask many times when we talk about movies. Like, are they actually clever, or are they being more clever than they actually are?
Yeah.
Try to pretend to be clever, kind of thing.
I think the question is, are the directors clever, or am I clever? You know what I mean?
Well, we know at least half of that. Is there anything else that you think I really need to know about these end matrices?
No, I really don't. I mean, like, I kind of told you when we started doing this that, like, I was really excited for the first one, and then the second two, I was like, I can do it, but I'm not gonna like it. And, like, I don't know. It's one of those things I'm curious to hear the opinion of someone who's coming into it with fresh eyes. I am nostalgic for the first Matrix, and I'm sure it's way clumsier than I led you to believe. I did not like the second two, so now I'm biased. Maybe they're better than I remember, or that I'm giving them credit for now that I've watched them. But at the moment, I'm pretty like, The Matrix 1, great movie. These other two, they try, but they're weird. And they kind of lose the thread, it feels like.
All right, well, I think I'm going to watch them with my spouse during this quarantine, and I will get back to you on some of my thoughts about this.
Let me know if you decide to get into sweet, sexy rave dancing, you know?
Obviously, what I'm going to do.
I mean, it's a good use of your time right now. What else do you have to do?
That's a solid point.
Just put on, like, drum and bass music, you know, and just go nuts. You're gonna need, though, like, somehow you're gonna need, like, a sweat bottle, because everyone was very damp in Zion. I don't know, it's like there was a lot of sweat flying off of dreads.
Oh my gosh.
Which, dread sweat? Don't know if I'd ever want to get that in my mouth.
I don't know, but Cody, do you remember this? The viewers will enjoy this story. Do you remember there's a video online, you can find it, and it's Dr. Horrible Sing Along blog, and there's a character named Moist
Yeah.
who's constantly wet.
Yep.
And one of our friends in college went to a Halloween frat party as Moist and brought a water bottle along that he kept spritzing himself with. And he bumped up against somebody during this frat party, and the guy turned around and was like, "You are so sweaty. You are disgusting." And our friend had to be like, "No, it's a squirt bottle," and like squirted this dude in the face to like prove to him that he wasn't super sweaty. And I think the guy genuinely thought that he just sprayed him in the face with his sweat. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's what's required. Okay, so you ready for our last quiz?
I am. Thank you for the tangent.
All right, what is the main threat in the Matrix series?
A giant drill.
A giant drill. There's also an army of robots behind the giant drill, but whatever. What is the main philosophical topic in the Rematri?
The story of choice.
Yep. Who directed the Rematrices?
The Wachowskis.
Yep. Who is the architect?
The source?
Oh, you know what? I never actually told you. The architect is the original. I never answered this. My bad. The architect is the original creator of the Matrix.
Oh, I was right. Okay, good.
Yeah. And what powers Zion?
Geothermal energy.
Yep. What is a werewolf?
A rogue program.
Yep. How does Neo defeat Agent Smith?
Hellscape, you told me that, and I got lost. There was a lot of shit
It was
going
very
on.
confusing.
Oh, hang on, no. He became Agent Smith, got his body killed so that Agent Smith and all of his clones would die. In a logic train I do not understand.
Neither does anyone else that watched the movie. Who is the Keymaker?
The Keymaker is basically a backdoor program to all of the Matrix.
Why are ships needed for the defense of Zion? This is a little bit of reading between the lines of something that I said, so this is a little bit unfair.
Okay, I'm gonna guess because you need to go different places to accomplish things, and it's a form of transportation.
The ships have EMPs on them.
That was it. Okay.
Yeah, so that was like the Hail Mary that Morpheus did when he swooped in. He blew an EMP that killed all the robots that were attacking at the moment. And I did not write a fifth question. Or wait, no, are there 5 questions? Nope. There's only 9 questions this time. That was that. What is the sacrificial act that Neo does that cements him as the one? That was from the first movie. That's my bad.
Good. That's fine. We'll take 9 questions, and I know the answer to that, which was the Jesus stuff.
Yep. My conclusion is boo. Better YouTube essays than movies.
And it sounds like they're worth seeing to have an opinion and to have the discussion.
Yeah.
And then depending on what your opinion is, they're worth possibly seeing again. But that's up in the air.
I would be very curious to talk to you after you had seen them.
Okay. We will do that. That will be a thing we do.
Yeah.
Thank you for rewatching those movies, even though you didn't like them because I asked you to and because you were going to show me this. I am very grateful, as hopefully are these viewers. Please jump in the comments below, everybody, and tell Cody how grateful you are that he was willing to go through it, especially if you disagree with him and you think there's either something super deep or super interesting or super meaningful or, like, saving about these movies. Go ahead and throw them in the comments below. Cody may or may not read them. I'll let him know if they're down there. Cody, do you have any final thoughts before we do our outro today?
For real though, about those YouTube essays, there are some really good ones. There are also some fully bonkers ones. So when you delve into the world of people on the internet talking about the Matrix, it's a beautiful place.
Oh, when I do that, I will definitely come back and we will have a conversation about some of these people and some of what they think.
Yup.
That sounds like fun. All right, well, that will do it for our class on the Matrix. If you enjoyed this content, jump in the comments below, like I mentioned. You can also like or subscribe to this channel. Both of those will help us in an immense way, and we'd really appreciate that action. Please come and interact with us in our Twitter or our Twitch links that are also below. And at the end of this, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week in Who Knows What Class. Bye, friends.
Bye.